The cold steel against his skin wasn't a threat. It was a final, damning judgment. Not the sharp edge, not yet. Just the flat, unforgiving weight of it, a punctuation mark on a conversation that had spiraled into this grimy, rain-slicked alley. His heart hammered a frantic, desperate rhythm against his ribs, a drumbeat of terror against the city's indifferent symphony. The man holding the blade wasn't a stranger. That was the cruelest part. He was a partner, a confidant, a man with whom he had shared dreams and ambitions just hours before. Now he was a silhouette, a voice like grinding gravel, and the glint of a promise about to be kept. "You broke the rules," the voice rasped, a chilling epitaph for a life about to be violently erased. "There are always rules." He squeezed his eyes shut, not in a plea to a higher power but in a desperate, final search for understanding. How had he fallen so far so fast? He had chased success with a relentless, all-consuming hunger. He had done what he believed was necessary, what the gurus and the titans of industry had preached. He had cut corners, yes. He had bent truths until they shattered. He had seen people not as human beings, but as assets or liabilities, pawns on his grand chessboard. And for a fleeting, intoxicating moment, it had worked. The penthouse, the tailored suits, the hollow admiration of those who only saw the shimmering surface. But now, in the stench of garbage and regret, with the cold steel promising a swift and brutal reckoning, the truth was a blinding, agonizing light. He hadn't been playing a game. He had been a fool, ignoring the fundamental, unwritten laws of a reality far more ancient and unforgiving than the stock market. The laws he was about to pay the ultimate price for breaking. His mind, in its final, frantic moments, didn't flash with memories of his triumphs. It screamed with the silent, agonizing weight of his regrets, the ignored whispers of his conscience, the faces of those he had trampled on his ascent, the hollow, echoing emptiness of his own soul. He had built a kingdom on a foundation of sand, and now the tide, red and violent, was coming in. The cold of the blade seemed to seep into his very being, a chilling premonition of the void to come. He had lived a life of his own making, a life devoid of the ancient wisdom he had once scoffed at as weakness. And now, he would die a death dictated by the very laws he had so arrogantly, so fatally dismissed. The story you just heard isn't just a story. It's a parable for a life lived without anchors, without the grounding wisdom that has guided humanity through the darkest of times. We live in an age of digital noise, of instant gratification, where the timeless principles of a meaningful life are drowned out by the siren song of the superficial. We chase shadows, we build our houses on sand, and we wonder why it all comes crashing down around us. Today, we delve into the heart of a philosophy born in the crucible of ancient Greece and Rome, a philosophy for warriors, emperors, and anyone who has ever sought to build an unshakable inner fortress. This is Stoicism, but this isn't a history lesson. This is a survival guide. We will uncover the 7 Stoic laws that you ignore at your own peril. These are not suggestions. They are the invisible architecture of reality, the fundamental principles that govern the rise and fall of every human life. And as you will soon discover, the cost of ignoring them is a price no one can afford to pay. There is a force within you, a silent, slumbering giant. It is the part of you that craves order, that yearns for meaning, that knows deep down that there is a better way to live. Today we awaken that giant. We arm it with the wisdom of the ages. We forge it in the fires of self-discipline and reason. By the end of this journey, you will not just understand these laws. You will embody them. You will become a force of nature, a master of your own destiny. But be warned. The path we are about to walk is not for the faint of heart. It requires courage. It requires a brutal honesty with yourself. It requires a willingness to look into the abyss of your own soul and confront the shadows that lurk there. So I ask you, are you ready to stop being a victim of circumstance and start being the architect of your own life? Are you ready to discover the dangerous power that lies dormant within you? If so, then stay with me, because what you are about to learn will change everything. Let's begin with the first law, the one that underpins all others, the one that, if ignored, guarantees a life of frustration, anxiety, and misery. It is the law of control, the radical, unwavering acceptance that some things are within our power and others are not. A simple concept, you might think, but in its simplicity lies a profound and life-altering power. We waste so much of our precious energy, our mental and emotional bandwidth, on things we have absolutely no control over. The economy, the political climate, the opinions of others, the past, the future. We rage against the storm, we curse the traffic, we lose sleep over a careless word from a stranger. And what does it accomplish? Nothing. It is the equivalent of trying to push a river uphill. It is a futile, exhausting, and soul-crushing struggle against the very nature of reality. The Stoics had a name for this. They called it the dichotomy of control. It is the first and most fundamental lesson a student of Stoicism must learn and internalize until it becomes as natural as breathing. Epictetus, a man who knew a thing or two about the limits of control, having been born a slave, put it this way: the chief task in life is simply this, to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Think about the power in that statement. The chief task in life. Not to be wealthy, not to be famous, not to be loved by all, but to master this one simple yet profound distinction. Because once you do, everything changes. Your mind, which was once a battlefield of anxiety, fear, and frustration, becomes a fortress of tranquility. You are no longer tossed about by the unpredictable winds of fortune. You are the captain of your own ship, navigating the stormy seas of life with a calm and steady hand. Imagine a man, let's call him Ethan. Ethan is a brilliant software engineer, but he is consumed by a gnawing anxiety that is slowly poisoning every aspect of his life. He is constantly worried about what his colleagues think of his code, whether his project manager will approve of his latest feature, if he will get the promotion he so desperately craves. He spends his days in a state of low-grade panic, his stomach in knots, and his nights in a torment of sleepless, obsessive worry. He is a slave to the opinions and decisions of others. He has staked his happiness, his very sense of self-worth, on things that are fundamentally and irrevocably outside of his control, and it is slowly but surely destroying him. His creativity is stifled by fear. His relationships are strained by his constant need for reassurance. His health is deteriorating under the relentless assault of chronic stress. He is living in a prison of his own making, a prison built with the invisible but unyielding bars of external validation. Now imagine Ethan has a Stoic awakening. Perhaps he stumbles upon a podcast or a book or a video much like this one. He learns about the dichotomy of control, and he decides, with a sense of desperation and a flicker of hope, to put it into practice. He starts his day not by immediately checking his emails and bracing for the latest perceived crisis, but by taking a few moments of quiet reflection. He reminds himself of what he can and cannot control. He cannot control whether his colleague will find a flaw in his code, but he can control the effort, the care, the meticulous attention to detail he puts into writing it. He cannot control whether his project manager will appreciate his work, but he can control the quality of that work, the clarity of his communication, and the professionalism of his conduct. He cannot control whether he will get the promotion, but he can control the passion, the dedication, and the value he brings to his team every single day. With this simple yet profound shift in perspective, the chains begin to fall away. He is no longer a slave to the approval of others. He is free. Free to create, to innovate, to be the best damn software engineer he can be, not for the sake of some external reward, but for the sake of the work itself, for the deep satisfaction of a job well done. He finds a joy and a fulfillment in his work that he never knew was possible. His anxiety, which once felt like a permanent and inescapable part of his being, begins to melt away, replaced by a quiet confidence and a deep sense of purpose. He is no longer a leaf in the wind, tossed about by every gust of external opinion. He is a mountain. The storms of office politics and corporate restructuring may rage around him, but he remains unmoved, anchored in the unshakable foundation of his own inner strength. This is the power of the first Stoic law, and it is a power that is available to each and every one of us right here, right now. All it takes is a conscious and consistent effort to distinguish between what is in our control and what is not, to focus our energy, our passion, our life force on the former, and to accept the latter with a calm, untroubled, and even welcoming mind. It is not about apathy. It is not about not caring. It is about caring about the right things. It is about channeling our precious and limited resources into the areas where they can actually make a difference. It is about reclaiming our power from the external world and placing it back where it belongs, within ourselves. So I ask you, what are the things in your life that you are currently trying to control that are, in reality, outside of your power? What would happen if you were to let go of that futile struggle? What would you do with all the energy, all the peace, all the freedom you would gain? The answer to that question could be the beginning of a radical and life-altering transformation. Now let's move on to the second law, a law that is often misunderstood in our modern world, but one that holds the key to unlocking a life of profound meaning and unshakable purpose. It is the law of virtue, the unwavering commitment to living in accordance with our highest nature, with reason and with excellence. To the Stoics, virtue was not some abstract, unattainable, holier-than-thou ideal. It was a practical, achievable, and essential goal. It was the only true good, the only thing that could bring us lasting happiness and fulfillment, what the Greeks called eudaimonia. Everything else, wealth, health, reputation, even life itself, was considered an indifferent. Not because these things were unimportant, but because they were not essential to a good life. A person could be poor, sick, and reviled by all and still live a virtuous and happy life. And a person could be rich, healthy, and adored by millions, and still be miserable, empty, and morally bankrupt. This is a radical and countercultural idea, especially in our modern society, which is so obsessed with the relentless pursuit of external goods. We are constantly bombarded with a never-ending stream of messages that tell us our happiness depends on having the latest gadget, the perfect body, the most followers on social media. The Stoics would have seen this for what it is, a form of slavery. A slavery to our own insatiable desires, to the fickle opinions of others, to the fleeting and unpredictable whims of fortune. A virtuous life, on the other hand, is a life of true freedom. It is a life lived in accordance with reason, a life guided by the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Wisdom is the ability to see the world as it truly is, not as we wish it to be or fear it might be. It is the ability to distinguish between what is good, what is bad, and what is indifferent. It is the ability to make sound judgments and to act in accordance with reason and with nature. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in the face of fear, to do what is right, even when it is difficult or dangerous or unpopular. Justice is the commitment to treating others with fairness, with respect, and with kindness. It is the understanding that we are all part of a larger human community, and that we have a duty to act in the best interests of that community. And temperance is the practice of self-control, the ability to moderate our desires, to resist the temptations of pleasure, and to endure the hardships of pain. It is the practice of living a life of balance, of harmony, and of moderation. These are not just abstract philosophical concepts. They are practical tools for living a good life. They are the compass that can guide us through the often confusing and treacherous landscape of human existence. When we are faced with a difficult decision, we can ask ourselves, what would a wise person do in this situation? What would a courageous person do? What would a just person do? What would a temperate person do? The answers to these questions will not always be easy. They will not always be comfortable, but they will always point us in the direction of virtue. Let's return to our friend Ethan, the software engineer. After embracing the dichotomy of control, he found a new sense of peace and freedom in his work, but he soon realized that it wasn't enough. He was no longer anxious, but he still felt a vague sense of emptiness, a sense that something was missing from his life. He was a successful professional, but he yearned for something more, something deeper. And then he discovered the second Stoic law, the law of virtue. He began to see his work not just as a means to an end, a way to earn a living, but as an opportunity to practice virtue, to express his highest self. He saw that he could use his talents not just to build clever algorithms, but to create technology that would enhance the lives of others, that would solve real-world problems. He began to think about the ethical implications of his work, the social and environmental impact of the products he was creating. He started mentoring junior developers, sharing his knowledge and experience with the next generation, not because he had to, but because he saw it as his duty to help others grow. His focus shifted from what can I get from this, to what can I give to this. And in that simple yet profound shift, he found a new and deeper sense of purpose. He was no longer just a successful software engineer. He was a good software engineer. He was a man who was using his gifts not just for his own benefit, but for the benefit of others. And in doing so, he found a happiness, a fulfillment, a eudaimonia that was far more profound and lasting than anything he had ever experienced before. He had discovered the secret that the Stoics had known for centuries, that the path to true and lasting happiness lies not in the pursuit of external goods, but in the cultivation of a virtuous character. This is not a call to a life of asceticism or self-denial. The Stoics were not against pleasure or wealth or success. They simply recognized that these things were not the ultimate good. They were to be enjoyed when they were present, and accepted with equanimity when they were absent. The only thing that truly mattered, the only thing that could never be taken away from us, was our character. As long as we were living in accordance with virtue, we could face any challenge, endure any hardship, and still live a good and happy life. So I ask you, what does virtue mean to you? What are the values that you hold most dear? And how can you live a life that is more in alignment with those values starting today? The journey towards a virtuous life is not a destination. It is a lifelong practice. It is a daily commitment to being the best version of ourselves in every situation, in every interaction. It is a path that is often difficult and demanding. But it is also a path that is filled with meaning, purpose, and a deep and abiding joy. And it is a path that is open to us all, if we have the courage to walk it. This brings us to the third law, a law that flows naturally and inevitably from the first two, but one that many people in our modern world of endless talk and empty promises find to be the most challenging of all. It is the law of action, the understanding that it is not enough to simply know the good. We must also do the good. It is not enough to have a philosophy. We must live our philosophy. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca, a man who lived and died by his principles, wrote, "Philosophy is not a parlor game for the clever. It is not a spectator sport. It is a matter of life and death." We live in an age of information overload, of endless intellectual stimulation. We have access to more knowledge, more wisdom than any other generation in human history. We can read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, watch all the videos. We can become experts in any subject we choose, from ancient philosophy to quantum physics. But what good is all that knowledge if we don't put it into practice? What good is it to know the path if we don't take the first, and then the next, and then the next step? The Stoics had a deep-seated contempt for what they called armchair philosophers, those who could talk a good game, who could debate the finer points of ethics and metaphysics, but who failed to live up to their own lofty ideals in the messy, chaotic, and often unforgiving reality of everyday life. For the Stoics, the only true measure of a person's philosophy was their actions. It is easy to be a Stoic in the classroom, in the library, in the quiet solitude of our own minds. It is easy to talk about virtue and reason and the dichotomy of control when everything is going our way. But what happens when the rubber meets the road? What happens when we are faced with a real-life challenge, a real-life test of our character? When we are insulted, or betrayed, or disappointed? When we are tempted by our lower desires, by our anger, our fear, our greed? That is when our philosophy is truly tested. And that is when we have the opportunity to show the world, and more importantly, to show ourselves, what we are truly made of. Let's go back to Ethan. He has embraced the dichotomy of control. He is committed to living a virtuous life. He is feeling pretty good about himself, about his newfound Stoic wisdom. And then one day, he gets a call from his boss. The big project that he has been working on for the past year, the one that he has poured his heart and his soul into, the one that he believed would be his legacy, has been given to another engineer. And to add insult to injury, that other engineer is a younger, less experienced colleague who has been shamelessly and sycophantically brown-nosing the boss for months. In that moment, Ethan is faced with a choice. He can give in to his anger, his resentment, his sense of injustice. He can storm into his boss's office and tell him what he thinks of him, of his spinelessness, of his poor judgment. He can badmouth his colleague to anyone who will listen, poisoning the well of office morale. He can sink into a pit of self-pity and despair, replaying the injustice over and over in his mind. Or he can choose to respond with stoic virtue. He can acknowledge his feelings of disappointment and anger without letting them control him. He can remind himself that his boss's decision, however unfair it may seem, is ultimately outside of his control. He can choose to act with professionalism, with grace, and with dignity. He can congratulate his colleague and offer to help in any way he can, not out of weakness but out of strength. He can use this setback as an opportunity to practice resilience, to learn from his mistakes, to redouble his efforts, and to become an even better, more valuable engineer. The first path is the path of the amateur, the path of the uninitiated. It is the path of emotional reactivity. It is the path that leads to bitterness, to resentment, and to regret. The second path is the path of the Stoic, the path of the warrior. It is the path of reasoned action. It is the path that leads to growth, to self-mastery, and to inner peace. The choice is his, and a similar choice is ours every single day. Every day, we are faced with 1,001 opportunities to practice our philosophy, to put our principles into action. Every interaction, every decision, every challenge is a test. And it is in these moments of testing, in these crucibles of adversity, that our character is truly forged. It is not about being perfect. We will all stumble. We will all fall short of our own ideals. The important thing is to get back up, to learn from our mistakes, to dust ourselves off, and to keep moving forward one virtuous action at a time. As Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and perhaps the most famous Stoic of all, wrote in his personal journal, his Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This is the essence of the law of action. It is a call to move beyond mere intellectual understanding and to embrace a life of lived philosophy. It is a challenge to be the change we want to see in the world, to embody the virtues we admire in others, to become the person we were meant to be. So I ask you, where in your life are you failing to put your philosophy into practice? Where are you all talk and no action? And what is one small, concrete step you can take today, right now, to start bridging that gap? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and the journey to a life of Stoic virtue begins with a single choice, a single action. The choice to act, the choice to be. This leads us to the fourth law, a law that is both deeply comforting and profoundly terrifying in its implications. It is the law of impermanence, the clear-eyed recognition that everything in life is transient, that everything is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is permanent. Not our possessions, not our relationships, not our bodies, not even our own most deeply held thoughts and emotions. Everything arises and everything passes away. As the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus, a pre-Socratic thinker who greatly influenced the Stoics, famously said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." For many people, this is a difficult, if not impossible, truth to accept. We cling to the things we love, we try to hold on to the people we care about, we desperately try to stop the relentless, unforgiving march of time. And in doing so, we set ourselves up for a life of inevitable suffering. Because the one thing we can be absolutely certain of in this uncertain world is that things will change. The people we love will leave us, either through death or separation. Our bodies will age and wither and eventually decay. Our most cherished possessions will be lost or broken or stolen. The only constant in life is change. The Stoics, however, did not see this as a cause for despair. On the contrary, they saw it as a source of profound liberation. When we truly understand and accept the impermanence of all things, we are freed from the crippling fear of loss. We can love more deeply, more fully, more passionately, because we know that our time with our loved ones is precious and limited. We can appreciate our possessions more fully, because we know that they are not truly ours to keep, but merely on loan to us from the universe. We can live more intensely, more vibrantly, more courageously, because we know that every moment is a gift, unrepeatable and irretrievable. The Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils, is a powerful and practical tool for cultivating this perspective. It involves regularly and vividly imagining the worst-case scenarios: the loss of our job, the end of a relationship, the death of a loved one, our own death. The purpose of this exercise is not to be morbid or pessimistic, but to be realistic. It is to mentally prepare ourselves for the inevitable hardships of life, to rob them of their power to shock and overwhelm us when they do inevitably arrive. As Seneca wrote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpected blows have the heaviest weight." By anticipating the worst, we can learn to appreciate the present, and we can develop the resilience, the inner fortitude to face whatever life throws at us with courage and with grace. Let's return to Ethan. He has lost the big project. He has responded with stoic virtue, with action rather than anger, but he is still struggling with feelings of disappointment and loss. He feels the sting of injustice, the ache of a dream deferred. And then he remembers the fourth law, the law of impermanence. He reminds himself that this setback, this disappointment, like everything else in life, is temporary. It is a passing cloud in the vast and ever-changing sky of his existence. He thinks about all the other challenges he has faced in his life, all the other disappointments he has endured, and he realizes that he has survived them all. He is still here. He is still standing. He is still breathing. He also takes a moment to appreciate all the good things in his life, the things he so often takes for granted: his health, his family, his friends, his passion for his craft. He knows that these things too are impermanent, and that knowledge, that stark and undeniable truth, fills him not with sadness but with a deep and profound sense of gratitude. He holds his wife a little tighter that evening, breathing in the scent of her hair. He listens a little more intently to his daughter's long and rambling stories about her day at school, seeing the world anew through her innocent and wonder-filled eyes. He savors the taste of his favorite meal, the warmth of the fire, the comfort of his home. He is fully present in the moment because he knows, with a certainty that is both sobering and exhilarating, that the moment is all we ever truly have. The law of impermanence is not a call to detachment, to a cold and aloof indifference. It is a call to a deeper and more meaningful engagement with life. It is a reminder to live each day as if it were our last, because one day it will be. It is a reminder to love with all our hearts, to pursue our passions with all our might, to squeeze every last drop of joy and meaning from our fleeting and precious time on this earth. It is a challenge to find beauty and meaning not in the false promise of permanence, but in the fleeting, fragile, and magnificent dance of existence. So I ask you, what are you clinging to in your life? What are you afraid of losing? And what would happen if you were to let go of that fear and instead embrace the ever-changing, unpredictable, and ultimately beautiful nature of reality? The river of life is constantly flowing. We can either fight against the current, exhausting ourselves in a futile struggle against the inevitable, or we can learn to swim with it, to navigate its twists and turns with grace, with skill, and with a sense of adventure. The choice is ours. This brings us to the fifth law, a law that is perhaps the most challenging for our modern, individualistic sensibilities, and yet the most rewarding for our souls. It is the law of duty, the understanding that we have a moral obligation to serve our fellow human beings and the larger community. The Stoics believed that we are not isolated, atomized individuals, but interconnected parts of a larger whole, a single, living organism. As Marcus Aurelius, a man who bore the weight of the entire Roman Empire on his shoulders, wrote, "What is not good for the beehive is not good for the bee." This is a radical departure from the hyper-individualistic ethos of our modern culture, which so often encourages and even celebrates a relentless focus on our own needs, our own desires, our own personal happiness above all else. The Stoics would have seen this not as a path to freedom, but as a path to a shallow, lonely, and unfulfilling life. For them, a truly good life, a truly human life, was a life of service, a life dedicated to something larger than ourselves. They believed that we each have a role to play in the great drama of human existence, a unique and valuable contribution to make to the common good. And our task, our duty, is to play that role to the best of our ability, with honesty, with integrity, and with a commitment to the well-being of the whole. This doesn't mean that we all have to become saints or martyrs, or that we must sacrifice our own happiness for the sake of others. On the contrary, the Stoics believed that our own happiness is inextricably linked to the happiness of others. It simply means that we should strive to make a positive contribution to the world, in whatever way we can, big or small. For some, this might mean a career in public service, or working for a non-profit organization. For others, it might be as simple and as profound as being a good parent, a good friend, a good neighbor. The important thing is to have a sense of purpose beyond our own selfish concerns, to see ourselves as part of a larger human family, and to act accordingly. The Stoic concept of oikeiosis is helpful here. It refers to the process of extending our sense of self, our sense of belonging, to include others. It begins with our own bodies and then extends outwards to our family, our friends, our community, our country, and ultimately to all of humanity. It is the understanding that we are all in this together, that our fates are intertwined, that what affects one of us ultimately affects all of us. When we act with kindness, with compassion, with justice towards others, we are not just doing them a favor. We are also acting in our own best interest, because we are strengthening the bonds of community that are essential to our own well-being, to our own survival. Let's go back to Ethan. He has embraced the law of impermanence. He is living more fully in the present moment with a deeper sense of gratitude. But he still feels a nagging sense of dissatisfaction, a sense that his life, however comfortable and successful, is ultimately meaningless. He has a good life, a comfortable life, but he knows deep down that he is capable of more. He wants to make a difference. He wants his life to matter. And then he discovers the fifth law, the law of duty. He begins to see his work as a software engineer not just as a job, but as a calling. He realizes that he has a unique opportunity, a unique set of skills to shape the environment in which people live, work, and connect with one another. He has the power to create spaces, both digital and physical, that are not just beautiful and functional, but that also promote a sense of community, of sustainability, of well-being. He starts a pro bono project to design a new website and online community for a local homeless shelter. He volunteers his time to mentor aspiring software engineers from disadvantaged backgrounds, sharing not just his technical skills, but also his Stoic wisdom. He uses his platform to advocate for more ethical and humane technology, for technology that serves humanity, rather than the other way around. He is no longer just building software. He is building a better world. And in doing so, he finds a sense of fulfillment, a sense of purpose that is far more profound and lasting than any award or promotion or stock option could ever provide. He has found his purpose. He has found his duty. This is the power of the law of duty. It is the power to transform our lives from a selfish and ultimately unsatisfying pursuit of personal happiness to a meaningful and deeply fulfilling quest for the common good. It is the power to find joy not in what we can get from the world, but in what we can give to it. It is the power to leave the world a little better than we found it. So I ask you, what is your duty? What is the unique and valuable contribution that you and only you can make to the world? And how can you start living a life of greater service, of greater purpose today? We are all connected. We are all part of the same human family, and we all have a role to play in the great and unfolding story of humanity. The only question is whether we will have the courage, the wisdom, and the compassion to play it. Now we arrive at the sixth law, a principle that cuts to the very core of Stoic resilience and offers a powerful antidote to the anxiety and overwhelm of modern life. It is the law of perspective, the ability to see things from a higher, more objective, more cosmic viewpoint. It is the practice of zooming out from our own petty, personal concerns and seeing the bigger picture. When we are caught up in the drama of our own lives, it is easy to lose perspective. A minor inconvenience can feel like a major catastrophe. A thoughtless comment from a colleague can feel like a personal attack. A dip in the stock market can feel like the end of the world. We become the center of our own universe, and our problems, our fears, our desires loom large and insurmountable. The Stoics had a powerful antidote to this kind of self-absorbed and ultimately self-destructive thinking. They practiced what is sometimes called the view from above. It involves imagining ourselves floating high above the earth, looking down on the world and all its inhabitants. From this vantage point, our own lives, our own problems, seem to shrink in significance. We see that we are just one small, insignificant part of a vast and interconnected cosmos. We see that our own brief lifespan is just a fleeting, momentary blip in the grand and incomprehensible sweep of cosmic time. This is not meant to be a depressing or nihilistic exercise. On the contrary, it is a profoundly liberating one. When we see our own lives in their proper cosmic perspective, we are freed from the tyranny of our own egos. We are able to see our problems for what they are: small, temporary, and ultimately insignificant in the grand scheme of things. We are able to cultivate a sense of humility, of gratitude, and of awe. We are able to connect with something larger than ourselves, with the timeless and universal principles that govern the universe. Marcus Aurelius, who as the Roman emperor had more than his fair share of worldly problems to deal with, from plagues and wars to personal betrayals, was a master of this practice. He would often remind himself of the vastness of space and time, of the countless generations of human beings who had come and gone before him, each with their own hopes and fears, their own triumphs and tragedies. He would reflect on the fact that the very same problems he was facing had been faced by millions of people before him, and would be faced by millions of people after him. This helped him to keep his own troubles in perspective, to maintain his composure in the face of adversity, and to act with wisdom, with courage, and with compassion, even in the most difficult and trying of circumstances. Let's return to Ethan. He has found his purpose in a life of service. He is working on the homeless shelter project, but it is not going smoothly. There are funding issues, bureaucratic hurdles, and conflicts with some of the more difficult and demanding members of the community. He is starting to feel overwhelmed, discouraged, and resentful. He is tempted to give up, to walk away from it all. And then he remembers the sixth law, the law of perspective. He takes a break from his work. He goes for a walk in the park. He looks up at the sky, at the vast and indifferent expanse of blue. He imagines himself floating high above the city, looking down on the park, on the homeless shelter, on his own small, struggling self. He sees that his problems, which had seemed so large and all-consuming just a few moments ago, are actually quite small, quite insignificant in the grand scheme of things. He thinks about all the people who have worked for social justice and community improvement throughout history, all the obstacles they have faced, all the sacrifices they have made, and he feels a renewed sense of purpose, of determination, and of humility. He knows that his own small contribution is just a drop in the ocean, but he also knows that the ocean is made up of drops. He goes back to his office with a new sense of calm, of clarity, and of resolve. He is no longer overwhelmed by the problems he is facing. He is able to see them as challenges to be overcome, as opportunities to practice his Stoic virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. He is able to approach them with a sense of detachment and objectivity, to make wise and reasoned decisions, and to inspire others with his own quiet and unshakable resolve. He has learned to see the bigger picture. And in doing so, he has found the strength, the resilience, and the inner peace to carry on. This is the power of the law of perspective. It is the power to transcend our own limited, self-centered, and often distorted point of view. It is the power to find peace in the midst of chaos, to find strength in the face of adversity, to find meaning in a world that can often seem meaningless and absurd. It is the power to connect with the timeless and universal wisdom of the cosmos. So I ask you, what are the problems that are currently consuming you, that are keeping you up at night? What would happen if you were to take a step back, to zoom out, and to see them from a higher, more cosmic perspective? What would you do differently if you were to remember the vastness of space and time, the brevity and preciousness of your own life, and the interconnectedness of all things? The view from above is always available to us. All we have to do is remember to look up. And so we come to the seventh and final law, the one that ties all the others together, the one that represents the ultimate goal, the crowning achievement of the Stoic path. It is the law of acceptance, the willing and joyful embrace of whatever life brings our way, good or bad, pleasant or painful. It is the art of amor fati, a Latin phrase, popularized by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche but deeply rooted in Stoic thought, that means love of fate. It is the ability to not just tolerate our fate, not just to endure it, but to love it, to see it as the best possible thing that could have happened to us, because it did happen. This is a radical, and for many, a deeply challenging idea. How can we love our fate when it brings us pain and loss and suffering? How can we embrace the things that we would so desperately, so passionately wish to change? The Stoics had a powerful and profound answer to this question. They believed that the universe is a perfectly ordered and rational system, a single, living organism, in which everything happens for a reason, everything has a purpose. And they believed that our task as human beings is to align our own will with the will of the universe, to accept our fate with a calm and untroubled mind, and to find the good, the opportunity, the lesson in every situation, no matter how difficult or painful it may seem. This is not a passive resignation to our fate. It is not a weak-kneed surrender to the forces of circumstance. It is an active and courageous and deeply empowering engagement with it. It is the understanding that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond to it. We can choose to see our challenges as opportunities for growth, our setbacks as lessons in resilience, our losses as reminders of the preciousness and beauty of life. We can choose to find the good, the useful, the virtuous, even in the most difficult and tragic of circumstances. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who faced war, plague, personal betrayal, and the death of many of his children during his reign, is a powerful and inspiring example of this practice. He would often remind himself that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He saw every obstacle, every hardship, every tragedy as an opportunity to practice virtue, to become a better and stronger and wiser person. He did not ask for an easy life. He asked for the strength to live the life he was given, and to live it well. And in doing so, he transformed his own suffering into a source of wisdom, of courage, of compassion, and of inner peace. Let's return to Ethan one last time. He has faced many challenges on his Stoic journey. He has lost a project, he has dealt with bureaucracy and conflict, he has been tempted to give up. But through it all, he has persevered. He has practiced the dichotomy of control, he has committed himself to a life of virtue, he has put his philosophy into action, he has embraced impermanence, he has found his duty, and he has cultivated a cosmic perspective. And now, he is about to face his greatest challenge yet, the ultimate test of his Stoic philosophy. He gets a call from his doctor. The results of his recent tests are in, and the news is not good. He has been diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of cancer. He has only a few months, perhaps a year, to live. In that moment, his world is turned upside down. All his plans, all his dreams, all his hopes for the future are shattered in an instant. He is filled with a sense of fear, of anger, of despair, of profound injustice. But then he remembers the seventh law, the law of acceptance. He remembers the words of Marcus Aurelius, "What stands in the way becomes the way." And he makes a choice, a difficult and courageous and profoundly human choice. He chooses to not just accept his fate, but to love it. He sees his illness not as a curse, but as an opportunity to live more fully, more deeply, more authentically than he has ever lived before. An opportunity to love more deeply, to appreciate every precious moment of the time he has left. He spends his final months surrounded by his loved ones, not in a state of mourning, but in a state of celebration. He finishes the homeless shelter project, pouring his last ounces of energy into a final act of service. He writes a book about his Stoic journey, a guide for his daughter and for the world, sharing the wisdom he has learned with a clarity and a passion that only a man on the brink of death can possess. He faces his own death not with fear, but with a courage, a grace, and a dignity that inspires everyone who knows him. He does not die in despair. He dies in peace. He dies a Stoic. This is the ultimate power of the law of acceptance. It is the power to find meaning and purpose even in the face of our own mortality. It is the power to transform our own suffering into a source of strength and wisdom and compassion. It is the power to live a good and happy life, a life of eudaimonia, no matter what fate has in store for us. So I ask you, what are the things in your life that you are currently resisting, that you are fighting against, that you are wishing were different? What are the things that you would so desperately wish to change? And what would happen if you were to choose to not just accept them, but to love them? What would happen if you were to see them not as obstacles, but as opportunities, as the raw material for your own growth and transformation? The path of Amor Fati is not an easy one. It is not for the faint of heart. But it is a path that leads to a freedom and a joy and a peace that is beyond all understanding. It is the path of the Stoic warrior, and it is a path that is open to us all. We have now explored the 7 Stoic laws that you ignore at your own peril. The law of control, which teaches us to focus on what we can change and to accept what we cannot. The law of virtue, which reminds us that a good character is the only true good, the only thing that can bring us lasting happiness. The law of action, which calls us to live our philosophy, not just to talk about it. The law of impermanence, which teaches us to appreciate the present moment and to let go of our attachment to things that are, by their very nature, fleeting and transient. The law of duty, which reminds us of our obligation to serve our fellow human beings and the larger community. The law of perspective, which helps us to see the bigger picture and to keep our own problems in their proper, and often insignificant, context. And the law of acceptance, which calls us to love our fate and to find the good, the opportunity, the lesson in every situation. These are not just abstract philosophical principles. They are practical and powerful and life-changing tools for living a good life. They are a timeless and universal wisdom that has been passed down to us through the centuries, from the battlefields of ancient Rome to the boardrooms of Silicon Valley. And they are more relevant now, in our age of anxiety and distraction, than ever before. We live in a world that is filled with chaos and uncertainty and constant change. We are constantly bombarded with messages that tell us that we are not good enough, that we are not smart enough, that we are not rich enough, that we need more money, more success, more followers to be happy. The Stoic philosophy offers us a powerful and much-needed antidote to this modern malaise. It offers us a path to an inner peace, a resilience, and a purpose that is independent of our external circumstances. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and the journey to a Stoic life begins with a single choice. The choice to take responsibility for our own happiness, our own eudaimonia. The choice to live a life of virtue and purpose and service. The choice to embrace the challenges and opportunities that life throws at us with a calm and untroubled mind. The choice to become the best version of ourselves. The story of Ethan is not just a story. It is a mirror. It is a reflection of the struggles and the fears and the triumphs that we all face on our own human journey. We all have our own back alleys of despair, our own moments of doubt and fear and weakness. But we also have within us the capacity for a profound and life-altering transformation. We have within us the power to become the architects of our own character, the masters of our own destiny, the heroes of our own lives. So I ask you, what will you choose? Will you continue to be a victim of circumstance, a slave to your own desires, a leaf in the wind tossed about by every gust of fortune? Or will you choose to take the path of the Stoic warrior? Will you choose to build an unshakable inner fortress, to cultivate a character of virtue and resilience, to live a life of meaning and purpose and joy? The choice is yours. And it is a choice that you make not just once, but every single day with every single thought and every single action. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of the Stoic philosophy. If this message has resonated with you, I invite you to share it with others who might benefit from this timeless wisdom, and I encourage you to continue your own exploration of this profound and life-changing philosophy. The path of the Stoic is not an easy one, but it is a path that is filled with a deep and abiding joy. And it is a path that can lead us to the one thing that we all truly seek, a good and happy life. Until next time, stay strong, stay virtuous, and stay stoic.